This video assumes that society has collapsed and we are in a without rule of law scenario. So the grid has gone down and you're not sure what has happened. You don't know if it was an EMP. You don't know if it was a natural disaster. All you know is the lights are out, there's no cell service, and you're certain of one thing, that people are going to start to panic. People are going to start to go back to their instincts and take what they need, even if that means breaking into other people's homes and taking from other people. You know that it'll only be a short while before people start to break into other people's homes. And now you realize that you only really have are two options. Those options are to stay or to leave. Now, on the matter of leaving, there's a few different questions that you're going to have to ask yourself. The first one is, I'm going to have to leave. So, is the place that I want to go to going to be able to sustain me? And the obvious answer to that will have to be yes. Because if it's a no, you're not going to last long. So for sustaining yourself, you can pretty much rule out deserts if you can. If you cannot, it's going to be a little difficult. But if you can rule out deserts, that's going to be the first thing that you need to rule out. And then the next question, which is a question a lot of people ask other people on terrain that they like, mountains or ocean? Now, if you like mountains, again, there's different types of mountains. You've got mountains in the desert, you've got mountains with forests, and you've got mountains with plains. The plains could be like parts of Colorado, deserts, obviously all throughout the west, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. And then you've got forests, which a lot of mountains do have. Mountains in Arizona do have forests. Mountains in Texas, not a whole lot of mountains in Texas really have forests. Mountains in New Mexico, all the big mountains in New Mexico have forests. But the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains, for the most part, do have a lot of forests, and forests do supply a lot of game that you can hunt. They also supply a large quantity of trees that you can make a shelter or your home out of. Some foresty mountains may have lakes and rivers as well, so you'd be able to fish from and obviously get drinking water out of. But however, one major challenge with mountains with forests is they are prone to wildfires. So this is going to be a major thing to consider if you want to go in the forest. You have to think about what are the possibilities of a wildfire. Now let's talk about the other option, is ocean. So obviously you cannot drink seawater. However, you still can convert seawater into regular water that, fresh water that you can drink. There's multiple different ways that you can do it, and there's thousands of videos on YouTube which show how to do that. Now, the big advantage of taking ocean over mountains is, well, you've got a lot of fish. So you're not going to go hungry so long as you can be successful at fishing. And remember that a lot of lakes, or not lakes, a lot of rivers do lead to the sea. So there are areas along the coast that do have fresh water that you can take advantage of for drinking water. You can also take advantage of this for fishing as well. Now, the coastline does have different type of terrains as well, and that can be desert, grassland, and wooded areas. Some can have forests, some can be deserts, and some can be plains. Your biggest threat with the coastline, obviously, is going to be hurricanes or something along those lines. So if you want to settle along the coast, going inland just a little bit would probably be your best option. Put enough distance between you and the water so that the tide does not affect you, and so that rising waves will not affect you in the event of a hurricane. Obviously, the hurricane itself is going to affect you, but you're going to want to make sure that you keep flooding down. If you choose to settle along the coastline, ideally the place would have to have enough trees for you to make a shelter, or something natural that you can create a shelter out of. So anywhere along the coast that has a forest nearby would be ideal. Now obviously you have the Great Plains and the Midwest, but that's for another time. This one is mainly about mountains and ocean. So next thing you're going to want to consider is the threats in that area. So regardless of which place you're going to go to, each place is going to have its advantages, its disadvantages, and it's going to have threats. So you're going to obviously want to figure out what the threats are in that area. So figure out what type of wildlife is in that area. Does it have mountain lions? Does it have bears, wolves, coyote, anything that can harm you? Snakes, spiders, insects? These are all things to consider before picking an area. Also, another threat could definitely be people, so keep that in mind. You're going to want to stay away from populated areas. Climate could be a threat, but mainly to those who are unprepared. So now let's say that you found an isolated area along the coast. There is mountainous terrain or hilly terrain nearby with forests around you. You've deemed all the threats in the area. You know what's around you. You know that there are possibly bears around you. There could be elk around you. Maybe possible wolves, and maybe the occasional mountain lion. With this in mind, you know what the threats are. You know the terrain in your immediate area. It's going to be ocean, so you can fish. There's mountains nearby, so you can hunt. Now it's time to get to know the area around you. I would say, to start out with, you should know about 50 miles in radius. And then after a little while, you should know about, I'd say, somewhere around 75 miles to 100 miles in radius what is around you, what settlements there are. Now keep in mind, you don't want to have your location to be close to any settlements. So I'd say at least 25 miles from the nearest settlement if you keep a low key. I'd say 50 miles from the nearest settlement to be on the safe side. And now that you have your location, you know the area around it, you know the terrain, you know the threats, you know what you can hunt and fish. Maybe you even know the growing cycles. Now you need to figure out your route to that location. You need to figure out how many roads it's going to take, what roads it's going to take. You're going to need to know the towns and cities that road passes through, if any. And you're going to need to make a few different alternate routes to get there in case something is blocked off, or there's a bridge out, or anything that's going to stop you from taking the main road that you've planned. And keep in mind the distance. Unless your vehicle can travel 1,500 to 2,000 miles on a single tank of fuel, then you're going to want this place to be within driving distance of you at least a day at most, or I'd say at most a day, possibly a day and a half, but nothing more than that, as getting out that far is going to be unrealistic for a lot of people.